dogmatic, awful thing, but I always thought McCarthy was right. There was the Un-American Activities, I think it was the Un-American Activities Council went ahead and was doing research on communism that infiltrated. Of course, Ronald Reagan wasn't a part of that. Ronald Reagan was fighting against this. But two-part question. One is that, were we being infiltrated back in the 30s and 40s? And I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. And then how do you get through to these people who I think it's like a religion to them. I think that they have some concepts and beliefs that you simply can't rationally talk to them about. They're a belief that has a wall built around them, and nothing I can say rationally can change their mind. How do I change their beliefs?
Okay, well, two good questions. But one little point is it was the Democrats who set up the House Un-American Activities Committee. It wasn't the Republicans. It was the Democrats. Harry Truman, Frank Marshall Davis used to call Harry Truman a fascist in his columns because Harry Truman was so anti-communist. In those days, the Democrats were often more conservative than the Republicans were. So people forget that little fact of history. McCarthy was 100% right. The only thing I'd say, I've got an Australian friend, he's dead now, he was an Australian communist who became a conservative later in life. And he said, I said, what did you Australian communists used to think of McCarthy? And I'll be a bit crude, he said, oh, we were shit scared of him. But he didn't go anywhere near far enough. And he didn't, And I've read all those House Un-American Activities Committee stuff. They were very fair, very balanced. I never saw one person ever hauled up in front of those things that didn't richly deserve it. From my own study of their movement. All the names were hauled up there, they were communists, absolutely. And so, but who was, and who named the phrase? You look at today's world. Sticks and stones, folks. People are terrified of that word McCarthyism. They think, oh, it's like being called a racist. If somebody calls you a McCarthyist, it's like you can't even go to church anymore. You're just scum. Who coined that phrase? It was the People's World, the Communist Party publication. They demonise. Who's been demonising Republicans recently? The left knows how to demonise, and the right, who are just good folks who don't believe there are evil people in the world, because they're just generous, good-hearted folks, because that's what we are mainly, can't understand that these people would deliberately tell lies to discredit them. Now, the argument about converting liberals, I wouldn't bother. Why would you do it? Because look, you've got 5% of the country trying to wreck it, you've got 10% trying to save it, you've got 85% in the middle who has no idea what's going on but are basically patriotic. You go for those 85%, not that 5%, let them stew. You go for the guy who cuts your hair, or the man who mows your lawn, or the lady who you play bridge with, or whatever. There's movies out there like that DVD Agenda. Get 3 or 4 people around to your house, people who know there's something wrong but don't know what, and get them on board. Show them that. Look, I would say 90% of the people in the Tea Party weren't politically active 5 years ago. If everybody in the next year commits to recruiting one person, you'll double your movement, and you're going to need it for that election time. I don't waste my time trying to convert liberals, except for sport occasionally. It's really not a productive use of your time.
It's almost a mental illness.
It is. It is a mental illness. I talked to Tammy Bruce about this. I saw this communist wrote a thing in the 50s. He said, communism is a political economic system, not a mental illness. Well, he was wrong. Tammy Bruce, she's a lesbian, ex-National Council of Women, total liberal, now total conservative, wow. has her own gun which she keeps under her pillow, she calls it Snuffy. She's about this tall, but she's a dynamo. But I said to Tammy, all these people you work with on the left, why were they that way? What made them leftist? She said, they're all damaged people. All of them. Something bad in their psychology, some traumatic experience in their youth, a father didn't love them, a mother abused them or something. There's always something. And on our side of the fence, if we have a personal issue, if we have a personal fault, we regard it as our responsibility to discipline ourselves and try and overcome it. That's our job. But the left sees it differently. If they have a personal fault, their job is to make everyone else like them. That's why the militant gays are so radical. They want everyone else to, they don't want to be accepted, they want to make everyone like them. They don't want to just be like normal people who just have slightly different sexuality. They want everybody to follow their lifestyle. The militants. And that's what it's all about. So, that's an interesting question because people often ask me why leftists, why when communism has failed so many times, why do people still think it's going to be good? Part of it is this. There's several reasons. Some people just go along like sheep. But a lot of American communists particularly, they are not a little bit... When my friend studied in Moscow in the 1980s, they said to all the communists around the world, our system is a failure. It does not work. But it will work when the whole world is socialist, when we can abolish the wage system worldwide. Then it will work. And so you get a lot of American communists who say, oh, it was those dumb Russians, they couldn't do it right, and America was sabotaging them all the time, but we'll do it right this time. And all the ones over there, they say, well, the only reason communism failed is because America drove them into bankruptcy. It was all America's fault. So therefore, to have world communism, we need to get rid of America, because then we can have paradise. So no matter how much it fails, it's always someone else's fault. That's why Stalin had all these purges of saboteurs. Because every time the cabbage crop failed, it must have been because the Americans introduced some pest. Or somebody sabotaged some American agent or British agent or Zionist agent. That's why they're so paranoid, because every failure must be attributed somewhere else. And there's another last reason why some of these people are so hell-bent on communism, and this is the most evil of them all. It goes back to Milton, Paradise Lost. It is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That's the devil. That's what the devil did. He thought it was better to reign in his own kingdom in hell than to serve in heaven. And a lot of these people think the same. They don't care how hellish your country is as long as they're the top dog. That's their motivation. The most evil.